You ever wonder how much a person can really change over a lifetime? I mean, can the person you are at 24, totally carefree and living the good life, even recognize the person you become at 49 who's been hardened by loss and war? Well, this explainer dives right into that question by looking at the incredible life of one man, Steven Langley.
Okay, just look at this. On one side, you've got Steven Langley in 1916. He's the golden boy on a beach in the Hamptons, and his biggest problem is probably deciding whether to go sailing or fishing. Then, you jump ahead 25 years. Same guy, but now he's a clandestine operative in Nazi-occupied France, where every shadow could mean death. So how in the world does a man get from that to this? Well, that's the journey we're about to take.
So, our story kicks off in a world that feels a million miles away from any kind of real trouble. It's 1916, and for 24-year-old Steven Langley, life is, well, pretty perfect. It's a world of immense privilege and really, really easy choices.
I mean, his life is practically a checklist for the American dream, early 20th century style. His dad, a German immigrant who changed the family name, absolutely crushed it in steel and on Wall Street. For Steven, that meant a sweet gig as a broker, summers at a beach house in Bridgehampton, and he just met the love of his life, Barbara Fowler. All the while, the Great War is just this distant noise, a headline about something terrible happening to other people, way over in Europe. It wasn't his problem. Not yet, anyway.
But here's the thing. For some people, a safe, predictable life is just boring. That safety net of Wall Street money and fancy beach houses, it just wasn't enough. Steven Langley had this itch, this craving for something more, for risk, for speed, for a kind of excitement you just can't find on a stock exchange floor.
And the spark that lights the fuse? It comes from his best friend, a guy named Joe Kinney. Now, Joe is a mechanic, a pilot, a total adrenaline junkie who looks at the war in Europe and doesn't see a tragedy, he sees the ultimate adventure. And when he starts talking about the Lafayette Escadrille, this legendary unit of American pilots fighting for France, he sparks that same fire for glory in Steven.
And boom, just like that, his life hits the accelerator. He marries Barbara, but then he's immediately off to war. He gets to France, but instead of the dogfights he and Joe dreamed of, he ends up as a flight instructor. For him, it's a total letdown. So when he gets back home and Prohibition kicks in, he and Joe see their chance for a new kind of war, a new kind of adventure, bootlegging.
And this is the key takeaway here. His whole thrill-seeking hobby, it becomes a full-blown business. He literally trades his Wall Street suit for a pilot's jacket and a high-speed boat running illegal booze into New York City. The risk was absolutely real, but so were the profits. And maybe more importantly for him, so was the thrill.
Okay, but this is where the story takes a really dark turn. Because the game he thought he was playing, it was never a game. And that thin line between a fun adventure and a real-life tragedy, it's about to get completely wiped out. See, Steven gets way too confident. He's totally blinded by his own success. When his wife, Barbara, tries to warn him, when she tells him she's scared for their family, he just brushes her off. He thinks he's got it all under control, that they're just small fry and no one serious would ever notice them. He could not have been more wrong. And that obsession came with a huge personal price tag. It drove this massive wedge right through his marriage. Barbara looked at him and saw a man she didn't even recognize anymore. A man who was choosing danger over his own family day after day. And then it all comes crashing down. A deal goes bad with a Canadian syndicate, and that whole small fry theory goes right out the window. His best friend, Joe Kinney, is murdered. And then, in a truly horrific act of revenge, the mob invades his home. They kidnap and brutally assault his wife Barbara and his young business partner, Sofia Fiorio. The game was over. He sells the business, finally forced to face the absolute devastation his adventure had caused. All right, so let's fast forward a bit to the late 1930s. Years have passed. Steven lost his wife Barbara to cancer, and now he's a widower, facing a new and much bigger evil. The thrill-seeking is long gone. It's been replaced by the grim reality of the Nazi Party rising in Germany. And this is where you really see how much he's changed. His company has an office in Berlin, and his Jewish employees are trapped. The Nazis won't give them visas, they can't get out. So Steven starts up a new kind of operation, using the exact same skills he learned as a bootlegger. Bribery, back channels, a stomach for risk. Only this time it's not for money. It's to save lives. And just when you think things can't get any worse, the fight becomes incredibly, tragically personal. War breaks out across Europe. His son, Jack, is killed in action, and not long after, his daughter Joan gets trapped behind enemy lines. This is no longer about adventure or even saving strangers. This is a father's mission. So the scene is Lisbon, 1940. It's technically a neutral city, but it is just crawling with spies from all sides. Steven's there for one reason, to get his daughter out. She's being smuggled through an escape network, sort of an underground railroad for refugees. But there's a huge complication. The whole operation is betrayed by someone he knew and trusted from his old bootlegging days, a man named Erich von Steuben, who's now working for the Nazis. The rescue attempt turns into a nightmare. The kind people running the escape route, Professor Callison and his wife, are just executed. Their own daughter is killed in the chaos. Now, Steven does manage to save his daughter, Joan, but at a horrifying cost, a complete bloodbath, all set up by a man he once called a friend. Now, after all that trauma, you'd think, okay, that's it. His war is over. But for Steven Langley, no. The fight has basically become who he is. There's just no going back to a normal, peaceful life after that.
So by 1941, the transformation is complete. He's not a broker, not a pilot, not a bootlegger anymore. He's an operative. He uses his old connections and his comfort with living in the shadows to work unofficially for the government, taking on incredibly dangerous missions deep behind enemy lines.
And his last mission, wow, it really brings his entire story full circle. He gets word that Sofia Fiorio, his old partner, the young woman who was attacked in his home all those years ago, is now trapped as the consort of a truly evil SS officer. So he goes back into occupied France one last time, not for adventure, not for money, but to rescue someone he cares about from the absolute heart of the Nazi war machine. And that's where the story leaves us, from that carefree kid on a beach to a hardened operative in a world on fire. It leaves us with this final haunting question. After a life that's been one battle after another, can a man like Steven Langley ever really find peace? Or is he just destined to be a man forever at war, not just with the world, but with himself?